Are you tired of feeling run down and exhausted? In our fast-paced world, we're often surrounded by toxins that impact our well-being. I provide holistic solutions designed to detoxify your body and environment. With cutting-edge AO voice scan technology, we identify the root causes of your discomfort or dis-ease, making personalized healing easier than ever. Start your transformative journey towards a healthier, toxin-free life, because at White Sands Self-Care, your well-being is our priority.
Do you suffer from anxiety? Ask your doctor about... Actually, don't. Try Vibe instead, the non-drug way to calm your nervous system. No crazy side effects, no floating, no feathers. Just gentle calm, without the side effects, like morphing into a dolphin. Vibe is energy therapy for your body, helping your nervous system reset naturally. Millions of therapy sessions delivered. Vibe. Calm without crazy. Side effects may include deeper sleep, calmer days, and feeling like yourself again.
Well, welcome everybody back to another Mindful Monday. So what if the arguments you're having, or you keep having, aren't really about what's being said, but what's being misunderstood? Joining us today on Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross is Dr. Patricia Timerman. She's a psychotherapist, author, and founder of Advocate to Create. With over 12 years of experience in grief, trauma, and couples therapy, she's the creator of the IAP Model, Intention, Action, Perception, a powerful framework designed to decode the hidden language behind our conflicts. Through her groundbreaking work and her book, Why Are We Fighting?, Dr. Patricia helps us understand how communication can either divide us or deeply connect us. So get ready to shift the way you listen, speak, and relate, because the conversation might just change everything in your relationship in your life. Dr. Patricia, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So can you tell me what inspired your journey into uncovering the hidden language of relationships, and how did that lead to you creating the IAP model?
I think in the work that I do, I've been a psychotherapist, which is short for saying licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist. My husband says I have like a million letters behind my name. But it was just being able to see how sometimes, like with clients and even in my own personal relationships, how whenever one person would say something, as it's crossing over to the other person's ears, I could see things getting lost in translation. So an example that I've used, and this was with a couple of years ago, and I need to speak on their cultural differences. So the male spouse was born in Latin America, I don't remember which country, and moved to the United States. The female spouse was born in the United States, but had Latin American background. Well, so the two of them spoke Spanish and the two of them spoke English. The difference was like being born somebody else and coming in later in life, like their experiences are a little different. And when we're in therapy, the first time that we were together, I remember him saying, "This is a sacrifice I'm willing to make." And his intentionality behind the word sacrifice was a positive connotation. But by the time it left his mouth and it reached her ears, now mind you, when couples usually come to me, they're already coming to me when they are either right before going to a divorce attorney, or like I do have instances when couples come to me preventatively, but most couples come to me when like they are at each other's throats. So knowing that when they talk to each other, you're already kind of like your body's contracted, kind of waiting for a fight. When the word sacrifice reached her ears, she received it in a negative connotation. Like, this is an investment to me, not a sacrifice. Right? And in that moment, I'm like, wait, Google Translate. That's who I am. That's what the IAP kind of is. I'm Google Translate. What was the meaning behind the word sacrifice to you? And he's like, this is the time that we're putting here. I am willing to make it because this is worthy for me. I'm like, okay, what was the meaning of sacrifice to you? Sacrifice has a negative connotation. Do we understand the difference? If not being there in that moment, then that misunderstanding wouldn't have gotten resolved, right? So
right.
in being able to see that and even experience it in my own relationship where I had an intention behind a behavior, verbal or nonverbal, and to most of our intentions, we have expectations associated to them. And when the response was not what I expected it to be, I can either get mad at the person or try to understand how come the expectation wasn't met. Like, did they understand what I was trying to do? And the first time I would just get mad. But then I kind of started to like, what got lost in translation? And I always say I love to see my life as a study, and I learn what happened, what did I understand from what happened, is that a pattern? So then I can make changes. Theoretical, like what are my theory? Theoretically, I believe that if I implement these changes next time, it will work. I will only know in practice once we implement those changes if it actually works.
Right. There's so much to unpack in there because, first of all, and maybe it's because we're always bombarded with negative, or because, like you said, sacrifice has a negative connotation. Because I'm not even that relationship, but I hear that and I think of it as negative, not as, something positive. So,
So, but it's funny because maybe it's the Brazilian background in me, but if I like this is a sacrifice I'm willing to make, I see it positively, right? So there can be like that cultural difference on words that we use.
yeah, that's true. That's true because there's so many different barriers. But I know we all have those issues. There's lots of times and things that come up that something will happen and I have a totally different perception of it or a different way of describing it than my fiance does. And sometimes it's like, what? I was like, okay, no, this is what And if they're stuck in their vision and they can't possibly see it and they're not open to it, then you wind up having this big debate.
That's the thing, and I think what you just said is really right on, is the inflexibility of seeing that another point of view exists. And I think what the IAP does, and again, the IAP stands for intention, action, perception, right? Intention is internal to us. Only I know what my intention is. No one can know unless I legitimately let them know.
Right.
Perception is internal to the receiver. So it's subject to their interpretation, their worldview, their cultural, racial, political, all of their perceptions. It's subject to their lenses. The only external thing is action itself, and not all actions have a universal meaning, just like words, right? The concept of like sacrifice in the context can have a different meaning depending how we're listening to it. The IAP brings the awareness to us that there can exist other interpretations of the same thing. And the idea is that it creates a flexibility to be able to say, okay, this is how I perceived it. How did the other person perceive it? What was different and what was equal? And sometimes my response to something that you've done may be disproportionate to the baseline and even disproportionate to the person receiving it, but it could be proportionate to my triggers and my past. And when I am able to understand that my response is proportionate to me, but not necessarily to everybody else, it requires me to kind of check myself and understand, where is it coming from? How come I'm reacting this way? Is it with everybody who behaves that way or only this individual? So it brings a lot of self-awareness.
Right. Yeah. And then that brings a good point too. Self-awareness is a big part, but you were also saying that a lot of the clients that you get are already at that stage. So I would think that would be very challenging because if they're already geared up and they're already looking for it, how do you break through to them and get them to like be more open?
So initially, when you start in a space where everybody's like that, there are things I say that when I work with clients, that I do a couple things simultaneously. One of them is building. So I'm gonna go to Gottman's emotional bank account. I use that in the book. I use Chapman and Gottman. So Gottman said through his studies, just by observing couples, that a positive to a negative relationship is not one-to-one. One positive interaction does not offset a negative interaction. You need 5 positive interactions to offset 1 negative interaction. So he created what he calls the emotional bank account. You need 5 deposits for every 1 withdrawal. Right? So imagine that like they withdraw $1, it costs you like $4 to do that. So it's a total of $5 that you're removing for every withdrawal. Then I use Chapman's love languages as the currency, and the IAP is the currency exchange. Meaning what? So with a simple example, one of the Chapman's love languages is words of affirmation. And the currency exchange would be understanding the difference between saying, "Would you like to go with me?" versus "I would like you to go with me." Right? The
Right.
first one, "Would you like to go with me?" The person who's asking may believe that I'm clearly showing my interest and desire for you to come with me while also giving you the option. But I have heard so many times by so many people that if you wanted me there, you wouldn't ask, you would say it. Right? There's a difference between "I want you to go with me, would you like to come?" versus just saying, "Do you want to go with me?" So that's like the currency exchange when I talk about the IAP. So when I'm working with clients that are already in that state, first I want to build upon their emotional bank account. I want to bring as many deposits as possible to their emotional bank account. So I start by saying just gratitude, right? Because when we are in constant conflict, the moment my partner opens their mouth, the likelihood that my entire body will already contract because I'm ready for a fight, it's there,
Right.
right? It becomes a classical conditioning. And so whatever I listen, I already listen from a need to defend myself stance. And I've seen it multiple times when somebody says something that's innocent and it becomes a fight because I'm so ready for a fight. When I introduce gratitude, so anything that is worthy of gratitude, I say thank you as much as I complain for anything that's worthy of complaint.
Right.
Right? So gratitude allows me to feel acknowledged, right? I'm feeling seen. And that ambivalence of not knowing when my partner opens their mouth, whether they're going to say thank you or a criticism, might relieve that immediate contraction, right? The more we use it. So I start to build upon what are the deposits. Why do you keep choosing each other? You're coming to therapy for a reason. You're trying to continue to choose each other. Why do you continue to choose each other? What is a deposit for you? What's a deposit for you? As we are doing that, I also like to see them separately so I understand their context a little bit more. But a lot of what happens in therapy initially is you, what he did, what she did, what he did, what they did. Right? And I try to get them back to what did I do? What role do I play that perpetuates whatever is happening? Because I don't have control over other people's behaviors, but I have control over my own. So I try to gear us back to what role did I play in that instance, and get them to focus more on their individual behaviors and how does it help their interactions. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah,
That was
absolutely
a lot of
does.
talking.
No, that absolutely does. And it was funny because when you said that I would like, I've done that before, because I'm sitting there at night and there's a drink that I have at night. And I ask my fiance, would you like to make me my drink? He'll be like, no, but I will. And he gets up laughing because he knows what I mean. But to your point, that's why, you just say, just rephrase it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there, have you, I'm assuming you have, but the I statement? People use it erroneously a lot. I actually wrote on my book, this is the book, by the way, people, and it's available on audiobook as well. Just letting you know, just came out on the 16th. Was the 16th
Nice.
was a Thursday. I'm super excited. But here I have the do's and don'ts of the I statement. And I think one of the ways that people cheat the I statement without realizing they are cheating the I statement is using the word that or like after I feel. The formula for the I statement, for it to work, there's a science to it, is I feel the emotion, I feel frustrated, I feel happy, I feel silenced, I feel anxious, whatever it is, uneasy, when something specific happens, and what I would like or prefer next time. The moment I say, I feel like you don't listen to me. That's not an I statement. That's a you statement veiled into an I statement, right? And the moment that we say the word you, I don't know about everybody else, but I can say that I immediately, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm no longer necessarily listening to everything you're saying, because since my action is being accused of something, how many times have I done it? Have I actually done it? Have you done the thing that you're accusing me of? I haven't done this all the time. There are all of this time. As I am defending myself, I'm not necessarily listening.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Right?
you go into full defense mode.
Yes. And then by the time that you're responding to half of what you heard, which is not everything. And you're so focused in defending yourself, then it becomes like a little bit of a tit for tat after. So there are rules to the science of the I statement. Don't use generalizations. Don't use always, nevers. If you say that I always do something, I'm going to start thinking about the time that I didn't do what you're accusing me of.
Yeah,
Right?
true.
I
What
remember,
always, never, they're like all inclusive, and yeah, that's pretty much not the case.
yeah, and my husband was going to say something. This was maybe last year or the year before, I don't remember. But he started with you always, and I stopped him and I said, I need us to just rephrase it, because my mind went immediately into always, what is he gonna say? And I'm not gonna listen to what you're actually gonna tell me. So he's like, you know what, fair. Most of the times when this happens, I'm like, okay, I can respect that. But I already let him know, because I knew that I'm no longer going to pay attention to the actual statement that you're making, that whatever, however it made you feel, because instead I'm focusing on the accusation.
So that's how you diffuse that. If they say you always, you just okay.
We learn what are the do's and don'ts. What are the things that exacerbate a fight, ignites a fight, and the things that stop it. Now, so the IAP, the entire title for the Why Are We Fighting is, where is it? Actionable Strategies for Effective Communication. So I give tools for us to be able to use, both as the person who's taking the action and the person who's receiving the action. But it's important to know these are tools. When we stop using them, they stop working.
Right,
The
right.
more we use them, the more they work. But so if both are willing to use the tools, a couple that I worked with graduated from therapy like last week. And they were saying, like, we've been using the code words, these are the things that have worked, and use the preamble, and our communication is so much better, and it is so much easier for us to even talk about uncomfortable things, because we're better able to notice them and understand that we get upset by them, not necessarily angry. The anger comes when I can't really express or vocalize my hurt.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I love. I'll definitely have to get that book myself. There's always more we can learn, right? And better, and communicating better is a huge part. But in your experience, what is the biggest misunderstanding couples have about why they're actually fighting?
It's a really good question. And I think the first strategy I talk about here is the three columns of communication, where like column one is venting. Like, say what you need to say, not to the intended person, for the love of goodness. Say what you need to say to your journal, on the shower. Like, I talk about the shower because you have the water heating you and soothing you, and is, noise muffler, and you put music on. Your venting is to release whatever is inside of you. There's a song that goes like 2 a.m. and I'm still awake writing this song. If I let it all out on paper, it's no longer inside of me, threatening the life it belongs to. And it's that. The purpose of journaling is venting, is letting it out.
Right.
Column two is deciphering the message. What is it that you want the intended person to receive? How come you want this person to receive this message? What purpose will it serve? What's the intention? And what are your expectations in return? And then column three is, what is the best delivery method? But the reason that I'm bringing this up when you ask your question is because a lot of the times we don't really know necessarily what is the message I want you to receive. There is one thing that starts and then it accumulates. Oftentimes it's an accumulation of so many resentments that have stayed, and we aren't able to clearly communicate in a way that I feel heard. I think I hear that a lot, is where my partner isn't understanding the impact things are having on me and vice versa. I actually had a conversation with a client earlier today about this, which is people tend to say, I'm reacting to what you're giving me, right? I'm just reacting. I'm just reacting. But the reaction is simultaneous, is happening concurrently. I do not know what the first action was, but we're constantly reacting to each other. And because we're constantly reacting to each other, not knowing the origin, I believe that my responses are proportionate to what you just did to me. But wait, I just did it to you because you did that to me. No, but I did that to you because you did that to me. You know what I mean? And so it becomes that tit for tat that grows. And now I feel unheard, unseen. My partner doesn't understand where I'm coming from, and my partner feels the exact same way. So in therapy, we kind of try to understand like what is triggering you? What are the things that are hurting? And if I don't understand, can I respect it? I love the question, what do I need from you to give you what you need? And so I try to do that a lot in therapy.
Yeah, and there's so many different things I'm sure that go into that too, because there's certain things or certain times depending on what I want to discuss that I have to wait for a certain timing when they're in a certain mood. But yeah, just like as something simple, I asked him about something he was doing in the kitchen the other day, and all of a sudden the face, the tone went. I was like, okay, hold on, I don't need the tone of the face. It was just a question. I was just curious. I'm like, okay, you do you. Just like but because and he changed once he realized realized it, but he just instantly had like this whole tone and expression, and I don't think people really pay much attention to that either. But that it does play a lot because it speaks volumes. It may not be verbal, but the whole body, the facial, I mean that puts a lot into communications also.
Yeah. And sometimes we are reacting to something we didn't even notice that we were reacting. I say, like, sometimes I'll bark not knowing that I barked. Right? And it could be because, like, there are so many other variables. Like, let's say that right before that, like, just today from my husband, before coming into the session today, I said, into, a recording, I said, I'm not going to make coffee for you right now. Because usually whenever it's coffee time, right? After lunch, I'll make coffee for me and I'll make coffee for him. But part of the reason that I said that to him is because I wanted to have time to get ready and come here. But if I hadn't said that to him, and in my liking to be on time and be ready and all of that, if he had asked me for coffee at that time, I would probably have responded with a stern answer, being either yes or no. Not because he's asking for it, because it's normal for him to ask, but because of all the other variables happening behind the scenes, like right all in here that no one is aware of.
Right.
And so my response would maybe have been disproportionate to him, but it was proportionate to me in that moment. So being able to even let him know beforehand, don't ask me for coffee. It's something that I learned to do because I got caught in the other moments where I didn't say anything, and when he asked, I was like, you know what I mean? So yeah, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that you did that. Like the tone and all of that. Sometimes when we do something and the person's response is also disproportionate to us, maybe check ourselves and be like, wait, is everything okay? Like, as opposed to immediately taking it as an affront.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, he's also kind of a jokester and stuff too, but it just, it happens. But we all have those moments. I remember even with my late husband when we'd have conversations, it's like, okay, let's just take some time to vent and get out for what happened to the day during the day, because if something upset him at work, it's not home, but it's still bugging him, and it comes out in the whole attitude when they start talking to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we are super stressed out with things that not everybody knows about, it still affects our body and our irritability, right? The management of the irritability decreases. If
Right.
we're at any deficit, we're not eating enough, we're not sleeping enough, we're not exercising, like all of those things, if there is no self-care because we're just doing, our irritability management decreases and our response, especially with those whom we feel the most comfortable with,
Yeah.
tends to become like a negative response. And not because I want it to be a negative response, it's just I can't control it at that moment in time.
Yeah. And bringing up that negative, because we're bombarded by negativity like all the time from pretty much everything and everywhere. How often do people assume negative intent in relationships, and what impact does that have on the connection and trust?
Let me tell you, a lot. I mean, I use my poker face really,
Yeah.
gave it away, huh? We have a tendency, the majority of people, I do not have statistics or something, but it just empirically, I noticed that the majority of people tend to assume worst case scenario. Not everybody, of course. And there are different levels to worst case scenario. There's this person that I knew that what my level of worst case scenario from any perception of an interaction was, I couldn't fathom hers, right? So when she would say her perception or her, I was like, didn't even cross my mind, right? So there are different levels of worst case scenarios. But if I think it's important to understand if does that individual, the history of your life together, do they deserve the benefit of the doubt? Because sometimes people do and sometimes people don't. If I'm having a relationship with somebody who we had so many deposits in the emotional bank account, but there have been like some withdrawals, okay, the history shows me that I can give the benefit of the doubt and use now is the rule. I had talked about the three columns of communication. I'm going to go to the rule of three interpretations. The rule of three interpretation is a behavior happen or an instance happen. My immediate thought may be worst case scenario. I ask for you to pause and identify two other possibilities. For balance sake, if you thought worst case scenario or taking it personal, I want you to think best case scenario, not taking it personal. And then a likely case scenario. And then you choose the one that serves you best. If you still want to choose worst case scenario, I just want you to identify the reason for yourself why I want to break up with this person. So choosing worst case scenario helps me to break up with this person. Gotcha. Right? But
Yeah.
once you differentiate between fact and behavior and interpretation of fact and behavior, unless you actually know the answer because you've asked, it's an assumption. And I try to use that a lot in my life to go away from acting from my worst case scenario. I try to act from which assumption serves me best.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it, but I remember in one of those the studies and things I was doing, we always say how it takes a conscious effort to think positively or to think differently. Because like how many times have you drove up to a gas pump and you've got one here, but the one in front of them is empty, and you just go off figuring that person has blocked it. You didn't stop to think, well, maybe there was someone in front of them. They just finished filling up first, and left. It's assumptions we make, and it's just so easy to go to the negative ones all the time.
Yeah, but there are purposes, right? If you think of the purpose, and it could be cultural or however it is, but a lot of the times we think of criticisms. They give you a purpose. They tell you what you're doing wrong, so then you can improve upon it. So when we are self-critical, the purpose of it is to continuously improve ourselves. But there has to be a balance. I created what I call instructive compliments. A lot of the times, again, could be cultural, but people see compliments as fluff because it doesn't have a purpose, but it does. Instructive compliments lets you know what you're doing well, so you can continue to do that while you work on the things you need to improve upon. So the self-criticism can be important, but when we do too much of it, now it becomes debasing, right? And it makes us question our value and our abilities. So when we are also able to do a cognitive balance to think about what are we doing right, just as much as we think about what we're doing wrong, it can serve us a little bit better because I can be more focused on improving on what actually needs to be improved while I maintain doing the right things that I'm doing. So I usually tell my clients, if you're going to be your worst enemy, also be your best friend. And you're right, it takes an effort because we're so used to only focusing on what needs to be improved upon that we talk about all the things that we've done wrong.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm sure cultural differences and everything else plays into it. But I just know from the majority of the people that that's what we come across. And we, like I said, I prefer to stay more on the positive side. It took a conscious effort. It took changing those habits to try and think, and like you said, come up with different assumptions or just different scenarios. And the important part that I like that you said about that too is choose, because it is your choice. You're the
Yeah.
only one that can choose it, no one else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So what I really do like about, and I talked about so being three columns of communication, rule of three interpretations, right? Depending on who it is. And so I like the concept of having actionable things, right? Things that we can apply, and they are easy. They're not difficult things to apply, but it does a mental training, because today I can much, not always, but a lot of the times I have a much easier way of pausing and interpreting things from different points of view. One of the things that I even talk about in therapy is sometimes like we've done something that to us does not, like, was not negative in any way, shape, or form, but somehow hurt the other person because of how they interpreted it. I may not agree with the interpretation. I get to say I apologize that my actions caused you hurt. I think that this part becomes really important. I also, at the same time, would like to be able to express how, or the intentionality behind my behavior and how I saw it so differently. And it's not an excuse. The I'm sorry, but, right? The I'm sorry, but I think the I'm sorry, but can be used as an excuse when I am trying to say that my action shouldn't have hurt you, right? And I think that that's different from saying, I'm sorry my actions hurt you. I wanted to express where I'm coming from. The reason being so then I gain understanding and you gain understanding. So there has to be reciprocity, right? Of where I was coming from. So then how should I shift what my intention was as compared to how it came across? And then if it happened again, how can you see things a little bit differently as well? So I do think, not all the time, but when you're able to have somebody that is open to understand, okay, you're apologizing for your actions and you're giving me insight as to the action itself. Now I also understand that next time you're going to work on yours, but I can also work on how I interpret things. And there has to be reciprocity. That's a huge word.
yeah.
It's not always equal, it's not always 50-50, but one individual in a relationship cannot be responsible for 100% of the relationship.
Oh, absolutely. So, for someone who feels constantly misunderstood, what is one powerful shift that they can start making today?
There is another worksheet that I have here, which is called WACA, with awareness comes action. If you notice that you often feel misunderstood, I think it's important to, one, is it always misunderstood by one individual or by multiple people? If that's the case, the with awareness comes action asks you to identify 3 different instances of what was my behavior, what was my intention, what was the outcome. Now, how did it get lost in translation? Now that I understand that the outcome is very different from what I expected it to be, what have I learned? What can I do differently? Because my husband loves to say this, and I appreciate it so much. It's like, if I'm driving one direction and another person is driving toward me, I'm going to be like, hey, dude, you're going the wrong direction. But if I'm driving one direction and there are like 5 or 6 cars driving toward me, maybe I need to check myself and change my direction. So if I'm notice that I'm often feeling misunderstood, I'd ask for us to identify, when are you feeling misunderstood? What's happening? What is the behavior that you're taking? What is the meaning or the understanding you would like to come from it? And learning our patterns and where it's lost in translation, what can we do differently? What can we gain from our experiences to apply to the next one?
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy too. This with the directions. It is so true, because a lot of times we just look at it your way, but if you've got a bunch coming at, then you kind of need to take a look at yourself and what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's really hard for us to get out of seeing things from our point of view because we're living our point of view. But the other person is also living their point of view. And when we're trying to convince each other of our point of view is when we see a lot of,
Yeah.
issues or fights. There's this person that was in my life, and because of our relationship, I learned a new coping strategy that's going into the next book that I call the post conversation. Now, with my husband, I noticed that whenever we would talk or have a disagreement, when I would speak about how I saw it, he would speak about how he saw it, but we weren't trying to convince each other. To the contrary, I would speak about how I saw it, and he would listen, and he's like, "Okay, I understand your point of view." And then he would say how he saw it, and I would listen, and I would understand his point of view, and we will often end up like being apologetic to each other. In this particular relationship, I noticed that that reciprocity didn't necessarily exist, right? So when both of us were working on, because we communicated so differently, because the two of us decided that we wanted to work on it, I developed then the post conversation, which is the two of us are gonna talk. But the goal is for me to understand where you are coming from. So my goal is not to get you to understand where I was coming from. No. I want to understand your experience of said incident. What triggered you, where you went, how come you responded the way in which you did, because although to me it was very disproportionate, I want to understand the proportionality from your point of view. Once we're done, now you want to do the same with me. Now you want to understand where I was coming from. How come I reacted the way that I did? And what we noticed, and this is not a study, it was just an empirical experience, but what we noticed is that, remember the Gottman's emotional bank account, is that there were some reimbursements from the withdrawal because we understood each other's points of view and where we came from. And although I may not agree with the response to the incident itself, I understood your response based on the context of your life. And you understood my response based on the context of mine. And then from there, we would create code words, we would create and apply the other actionable strategies here. The moment we stopped doing that, the moment when only one person would do it but the other person wouldn't, it stopped working. So that's why I say, like, this is a tool that we use. The more we use, the more it works. When we don't use it, it doesn't work.
Right. That would be interesting to try. Have you ever had somebody that's just kind of, stubborn and doesn't want to, or still wants to argue their point?
Yeah. And I think it gets to a point where you need to then have your own boundary with yourself, right? If you get somebody who is stubborn, who continues to express, no, I didn't do anything, everything is on you. So if everything is done to you and nothing is done by you, then I need to reach my boundary and understand, like, if you're not in a space of providing reciprocity or taking accountability, I'm not in a space to give you, I can't give you that space anymore, right? So it's about us identifying what are our own boundaries with ourselves and with other people. And unfortunately, it does happen. My experience have been very little with that, but the times that it has been okay, my boundary has been set. If you can't accept accountability for anything, unfortunately I can't move forward. When you're able to, I'm open to it.
Nice. Yeah, and boundaries are always important in pretty much anything. But
Yeah.
you have experience too working with people that have been through grief or past trauma. So how does grief and past trauma silently influence the way we communicate and perceive our partners?
So I worked a lot with suicide grief. I used to work at the 1-800-Suicide when I first graduated, and then I facilitated survivors of suicide loss group for about 10 years for the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention. So just talking about grief, grief changes our worldview, and the type of grief can also change our worldview. Suicide grief is very traumatic, right? It's a strong grief to homicide, a sudden death. They all have their different responses to it. But I can say with suicide grief, for example, it takes about like 3 years for us to go from it's surreal to real to adjusting to a normal that I don't want. And what I used to take for granted, what was like my baseline for like trivial things was much higher. Now it isn't. I can bear, like, I only can be with people that I feel safe with. I'm crying. So it changes how I go through life. With a trauma, when we go through a trauma, it depending on the type of trauma, the smell, like whatever we think about your senses, right? Whatever you hear, see, like anything can bring back that moment. And it can impact our ability to trust people. It's like you put sunglasses on and now you see the life with sunglasses on, and it is really difficult to put it back up because now I can't really trust myself at times. I can't trust other people. I don't know what may set me off or what may not set me off. So it really does affect our defense mechanisms. It really does affect our ability to interact with other people. Are they understanding of what I'm going through? Are they not understanding what I'm going through? I don't even understand what I'm going through. I don't even know this version of myself. So it absolutely impacts our entirety, especially when we're trying to pretend it's not there. The more we try to pretend it's not there, the more it comes out. There's this great book called Your Body Keeps the Score. Wonderful read, right? But it talks about how our body keeps our trauma. When we are not talking about it, we're pushing it down and it's staying, right? When we go to therapy, one of the things that we do is we talk, we liberate it, we talk about it, we let it come out so you can hear yourself, so you can become more desensitized to it. But grief and trauma, I mean, you expressed, my late husband. So I can only imagine your ability to share more from a personal experience. I mean, I have my own personal experiences with people that I've lost to suicide or just loss in general. But it affects our being.
It does. It changed my perspective on a lot of different things, and for some, I've seen it maybe change them temporarily, but then they go back to to the way they were. So it impacts everybody differently, And then I have friends, and I know we've been talking about the relationship with couples, and you work a lot with couples. But would this not apply also to like maybe best friends or other relationships? Because
So the IAP model focuses on communication in spite of relationship. Even in my working relationship, I have cold words with my employee because she's like, whenever you'd call, I would just get anxious because damn, my boss is calling me. And so like we've created cold words to help tame the anxiety because it's not always that I'm calling that is for an issue. Sometimes I'm calling just to check in and I don't want a missed call to then create that anxiousness. So you can use even in when I go through the worksheets, I have some worksheets that are for love-based relationships, so friendships, couples, family, and non-love-based relationships, collegial, professional. So it really is focused on communication.
yeah, and I think that's a big part of it because I've spoke to a number of people and I've always told them it's like we lost my father 3 years ago, so my mom lost a husband, I lost a husband, but I'm not ever going to say I understand what she's going through. I can relate, but I can't understand because it's a totally different. It's a different relationship, different perspectives, different people. I'm not my mom, and she's not me, and so. But like you said, but there's communication.
Yeah. So
So
the IAP, even in grief, right? Sometimes like we want to do what we think is best. So I'm gonna distract you. I want to like distract you from your pain, and the other person may be receiving it as, oh my God, stop trying to distract me. Like let me be, or I don't want to say the person's name because I don't want to for you to feel sad. I am thinking about this individual all the damn time. Whenever you talk about them, it just lets me speak upon it. And it makes me happy because, yes, I'm going to cry because I'm sad that they're not in my life. So I do use the IAP with my clients when I talk about grief because it is communication, right? It is understanding that within the family, like you said, kinship impacts our grief experience, culture impacts our grief experience, the type of relationship impacts our grief experience. So we may not all grieve the same way. There is an individual grief experience and a familial or communal grief experience. So to be able to acknowledge that, I had this client that when she had expressed like I feel very alone after having lost, my person, because it seems that I'm the only one grieving, because everybody around her didn't want to cry because they wanted to protect her. And when her spouse, cried with her, she said, I felt normalized. Like I wanted that. I wanted to know that I'm not the only one who's feeling this, that there are other people actually feeling that. So we never know what the other person know and needs. They may not know what they need, but I think asking can be very helpful.
Yeah, and communication is key because people try to do the best they can with what, they have or what they know to try and help and support you. And yeah, that just, when you said that, just reminded me. So my husband passed 4 days before Christmas. And so when we went to Christmas, my dad picked me up so I didn't have to drive and told me to, he knows it's been a tough time, but my sister had young kids, try to hold it together. So, so I did. And as soon as my sister came in, my sister starts crying and just, I'm like, oh yeah, all that just went right. That just went like right out the window. But I'm like,
Because it's worthy of it, right? Like, oh
yeah.
my God, we lost our person. It's let me. Yeah.
I know you mentioned self-awareness before. What role does self-awareness play in breaking unhealthy communication patterns, and how can someone begin to developing it?
Oh my God, a lot. Even for me, like I developed the IEP, I'm still becoming self-aware about things. Like my exercise at the end of the year was what did I want to leave behind in 2025 and what I wanted to bring with me to 2026. And I said I wanted to leave behind over-explaining because I want people to really understand. But I'm like, no, I need to leave that behind. I'm getting better at it. I sometimes like I'll have like code words with my husband, so he can, when he sees it, he can tell me through the code word. Every code word must have a meaning associated to it, instructions to all parties involved, and only used when warranted. So when I can't see things myself, I'll ask for assistance until it becomes, more natural. What I wanted to bring with me to 2026 was to think about me in relationships as much as I think about others. So that's where my boundary setting has been developed, which I'm happy with. But the awareness is a big part. So with awareness comes action, is understanding that once we become aware of something, it can take a minute for us to be able to affect change because we're so used to doing that thing. So we go with, oh, my husband used to dislike when I'll say, oh, I'm sorry that happened, whenever he would tell me something. And he said, and I didn't understand why, because whenever he'll tell me something that was, at work that wasn't great, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. He did not like that. Um, and so when I'm like, okay, but I need to say something, like I want to say something. So I shift to that sucks. But at first, I would say like, I'm sorry, and he would look at me. And then I understood when we communicated, it's like, it feels very distant. He's like, I'm sorry that happened to you, right? That was how it was being received, even though
Right.
it was not the intention. But if that's how it's being received, it's easy for me to try to shift. And so with awareness comes action, I would start with, I'm sorry, and then that sucks. Today, I'm much better with just saying that sucks as opposed to I'm sorry, but that period of adjustment is required. Is when we are not acknowledging the role that we play in relationships. So I go back to the With Awareness Comes Action worksheet, which requires for me to understand what were the actions that I took that led to this or that contributed to this. So if you and I are talking and I say something and I notice that your response is not what I thought I was going to receive, it could be because maybe you're in this whatever space, but I think part of it is questioning, like, wait, pause. What did you understand from what I just tried to do? Because something got lost in translation. I think that's part of that self-awareness, is understanding that people are reacting to what they are receiving as much as I'm reacting to their reaction.
Right.
So instead of being in this endless react, if I am able to pause and wait, this was not how I saw this going. Like, what just happened? How did you get what I said? That can help break the cycle of miscommunication.
Yeah, I love that. It's a very, very valid point too. So Dr. Patricia, we have about 5 minutes left. So, if every listener could walk away with one new perspective about communication and relationships, what would you most want them to understand?
When you listen to something that triggers you, pause, think about it, ask what was the person's intention behind what they said. It's like, hey, I'm sorry, like, could you explain to me? The reason I say that pausing is huge. Without the pause, instead of responding, we're reacting. And we're reacting to what we understood or what we thought the other person said. And if we're right after asking, then react away. But there is a chance that benefit of the doubt may be important, right? So what I'll say is whenever something funky, either what I said, the other person took it very differently from what I intended, or I'm reacting, pause, seek clarification, and then react accordingly or respond.
Yeah, very good point. I like that. Yeah, that's, we always have a habit of just responding when, yeah, we really need to step back and pause. So I think what's important, because I know a lot of us have communication issues out there, and I know we all have our moments anyway. When you work with people, do you work with them from all over online, or is it just in person, or?
So I'm licensed in Florida. So when I do therapy for anyone anywhere in Florida. I am mostly virtual. I do see clients in office once a week. However, I do presentations, where I talk about being the IAP model and how to implement it all over. So that one, there isn't a limitation of my license, which I enjoy doing. I can talk about this for forever.
Oh, licensed or not, I still think you'd be a huge help to a lot of people. Is the best way for them to find out about your programs and the IAP through your website, then, the Advocate to Create?
Yes, advocate to create. I have a few trainings or workshops at the advocate2create.teachable.com, but if you just go to advocate to create, you'll be able to find them. You can find my book on Amazon. You can find the audiobook on Audible and iBooks. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, I would be too. I mean, that's huge because, yeah, I have some that are on Audible and stuff because it depends on what you're doing, right? Some people like to listen to books when they're driving. It's like me, I need tunes. I need more hyped up. But books I love to listen to when I'm just like sitting out somewhere or like the sun if you can't like really brighten read. So, though I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have any other future books coming out then?
I already have my thoughts on like the post conversation and a couple other things that are going into the second book. So I already have notes and I'm gonna start composing it hopefully soon. I'm actually very excited about that as well. And I wanted to let everybody know, so even with the Audible, because there are people that are auditory learners, kinesthetic, visual, I have added the accompanying PDF, which is chapter 4, with all the worksheets.
Nice, nice. I look forward to, for one, to reading it because you've already brought us so many different perspectives and insights in the way to handle things. And I love your term, the Google Translate. The Google Translate. I'm pretty sure everybody nowadays can understand Google Translate.
Exactly, exactly. And it's really what I play in sessions. Like when my clients, I'll say like graduate, because like I'm such a proud mama,
Uh-huh.
from therapy is that they no longer need me to translate it because they are able to see beyond just the immediate snapshot of the miscommunication. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all of that with us today. I'm sure it'll help many out there who have had some communication issues, and if not, you still don't understand, reach out to Dr. Patricia or get her book and start there. Lots of places you can start. But thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights and perspectives with us. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday, a fantastic week, and we will see you all next time.